So today we're going to have a quick look at a few different sets of DJ software that are available on the market at the moment. We're looking at the big players on this occasion. We're looking at Traktor, at Serato, Rekordbox in performance mode, of course, and into Cross DJ as well. We're not touching on Virtual DJ because I don't have a copy of it. I'm not prepared to pay for it to make a video. But if Virtual DJ want to allow me to make a review on their software, then I'm happy to include them. So at this occasion, it will be just Rekordbox, Cross DJ, Traktor, and Serato, the four pieces of software that I own and I use. As we can see on the screen at the moment, we do have Rekordbox there. There are a couple of things that I really like about Rekordbox. There's a couple of things I really don't like about Rekordbox. And bearing in mind it was released in October 2015, we're a good, 15 months on into the release, and we're on version 4.2.5, which was released in December last year. We are talking now on the 4th of January 2017. To be honest with you, it's a lot more stable than it was originally. I was involved in the beta side of the testing, and there were a lot of little bugs and glitches in the beginning, but the software is phenomenally more stable than it was. The little bits that bug me, if we look across the collection screen, bear in mind, let me just say there are some good things about the collection. This is just one little niggle that is kind of holding me back from using it on a regular basis. It's something that I would like to see implemented. So if we look across, you can see there's quite a few fields within the collection screen. And alongside your traditional stuff, your track title, your artist, your album, your genre, you have your BPM field. Now, obviously, the BPM field is populated by the software with Rekordbox, as opposed to from the ID3 tags that some of the other softwares use. Now, the reason why this bugs me a little bit is because I have a collection that I use. I'm a mixture of DJs. I DJ in club work, but I also do mobile weddings and stuff like that as well. So I have a very large collection that I use on a regular basis, and most of this, 90% of my collection, has been processed through Mixed in Key. Now, Mixed in Key will write the BPM tags and the ID3 tags for you for the key, and most software will pick up that BPM and the key information from those tags. Rekordbox have chosen, or Pioneer have chosen, not to do that with Rekordbox, and everything needs to be analysed to allow that information to show. Now, obviously, if you've got a large collection, this is a bit of a problem because this does take a long time. If you have a smaller collection, then it probably isn't so much of a problem to you. The tracks do analyse automatically as you load them into each of the decks, so it can be done on an ad hoc basis, but then that does mean that when you're scrolling through your collection and you're glancing, if it's a track you've not played before, there will be a 0 in the BPM, and in the key fields there will be no information as well. So, as with most of my videos, you can tell we use stuff from the audio library that YouTube provide. So we've got a couple of tracks loaded in at the moment. We've got Otis McDonald, Ever Felt, Part 2, and on the right side, Joe Bagali, Chicago. So there's no mixer set up on the screen like you would expect with the likes of Traktor, but then it is more similar to Serato, I feel, than it is to Traktor in the way that it runs, the way that it's built, and the way that it performs as well. You can see that going on each of the track decks, you can have 4 decks. I've got it set on two decks vertical at the moment. You can set all the different functions within that, or the different the information within that. You can set it how you want it to look, kind of thing. What I would say is that the little dials that you can see with the BPM in the center and the percentage of speed increase. So we'll just change that now on. I'm using a Pioneer DDJ SX2 to do all of these reviews with, or overviews with. I think the more overviews than reviews. You can see it going up, and you can see the waveform on the right of that just altering there a little bit as well. Now that is closely replicated the display within the Nexus CDJs. That's where you're likely to see that. It does have the slip function indicator, so the ring will go red when it's in slip mode. And of course, just to the right of that, you can see the master tempo button as well, just not the needle search, which will go on and off as you turn the tempo lock, the master tempo on and off. You've got 8 hotkeys as you would expect with these types of systems. you have the pad FX. Now this is different to most of the other kit, because obviously on this particular button on most controllers, this is the roll function. So on Rekordbox, they've chosen to use this for effects. Now I really like this. This is something that I've really got into and really enjoyed. Each of the buttons are customizable. You can edit them to work differently, to be different features, different functions, so on. There are 2 banks, so obviously hitting roll on your controller will bring up the first pad effects. Shift and roll will bring up the second set, and then obviously another click will bring it back. So just give you a quick view of what those look like when they're in use. So on deck, on pad effects 1.
Are you listening? Damn.
So you got slip loops across the top 4.
Yeah.
So obviously what they mean by slip loop is while the loop is playing, the track continues underneath without stopping. On the bottom left there, you've got a delay. You've got a filter LFO. You've got a classic reverb. And then you've got a virtual break. Onto the second set of effects, you've got transform across the top 4 buttons. You've got a pitch function. That's just a straight pitch stop or drop, even, get the right word. You've got a crush, a white noise generator, and then an echo. That's an echo fade out, so that's a nice little end or transition effect that you can use there. What I didn't quite touch on there really is the fact that you can use multiple effects at once. So if we take this track back, so you get some nice little effects out of it by using that. I really like that. That's definitely a more advanced functionality than you would see in Serato. Slicer, this is something that most of you will probably be familiar with from the likes of Serato. As you can see, the blue box moving across, that is the section of the track that it's playing, and you can replay anything in order. I'm not very good with that. If you click shift and the slicer function, it moves on to slicer roll. And what this does is it keeps an 8-bar loop playing constantly, just loops and loops and loops the same 8 bars. And then you can do the same thing, replay any section of that 8-bar in whatever order you like. As you can probably tell, I don't use that function myself too much. So as with what you'd expect really with the Pioneer software is the performance of the actual decks, the play and cue buttons and stuff like that work very much like the Pioneer expected functionality. So to be able to set a cue point, you have to pause and then move the deck to where you want it to be, and then hit your cue point. And when you hit your cue point, it'll play. You have got a needle surge across the system as well, which does only work when it's paused. You can see it scrolling across there. So going into the pitch control side of things on the Rekordbox software, of course, you've got your 10%, your 16%, your wide, and your 6%. So a nice little variation of the options with the pitch control. And depending on what controller you've got, you might want to go for a lower percentage range to give you a finer control on your tempo control. you might want to go for a lower pitch range so that you can get a longer throw, more accurate control on your pitch fader. If you've got something with quite a long physical fader on your controller, then you can afford to go for something and with a wider pitch range, because you'll still get that fine gradient, but you've got more room to play with on your controller. Now, there are other effects facilities within the software. I'm just going to move my microphone round while I go back towards the PC, away from the controller for a second, because with the effects section here, we need to actually use the mouse. So on the top there, you can click effects, and that will show or hide the FX panel, and you can have a single effects or a group effects, as you would expect with these things. And within there, you have your menu as to what effect you can use or what you want to use. All three have the same options. It's just down to you which ones you want to choose. And then you've got a release effects, which is the vinyl break on this particular occasion. And of course, your on-off functions within those and your level of destruction, so to speak. You can also choose where the effects is assigned, so deck 1, 2, 3, 4, sampler, and of course the master as well. On to CFX. This is your color effects. I've not really played with this too much. This is just a singular. On this occasion, it's a filter, or you can change it into a multiple. I'm just trying to work out a little bit more. I've not really played with this bit too much, I have to be honest with you. There we go, edit. I knew you could do it somewhere, and you can change what your color effects are there across those four. From there, you go in, you've got your sampler, and on the sampler, you've got 8 banks. Those 8 banks pertain to the sampler button on your controller. If you've got, for example, a Pioneer controller, you would hit the 4th button, and then that gives you control over those sample decks. Let's just drop a couple in here just for a test. So they are lit up now on my controller. And if I turn up my sample volume, which is a separate control on my Pioneer controller, and there we go, very typical sampler effects that you would find, and not bad quality really, to be honest with you as well. Personally, I don't use that kind of thing, but it's interesting to know that it's there. You can shift and hit them to remove them from the controller itself. You've got then functionality to mute it or reject it on the actual software. You've got a physical mixer that you can have on screen if you want it to be there. I was saying earlier on that it's not there on the standard view. Personally, I wouldn't use this. It's very basic. It is just your high, mid, low, your cue, so you can see what you've got cued, and then your gain or your trim. So it's very basic, but it is there if you want to. And then, of course, you've got your record panel. Very simple. It'll pick your master out, your level. It will show you your levels here, and then you've got the record option. The actual settings for those are all within the settings panel for the software as well. Within the preferences, you'll understand as we go into this comparison video a little bit more how this layout is familiar. This layout is very similar, albeit a much cleaner look to Mix Vibes Cross DJ. I believe that part of this is down to the fact that Mix Vibes were involved in the original versions of Rekordbox, the management software. I'm not entirely sure how much involvement they have with the performance pack. There are similarities between the way that the performance pack works and with Cross DJ, the software as well. As you can see within here, you can choose whether you want iTunes, Pulse Locker, and your standard track explorer. Your playlist palette is the little set of lists that are appearing across the top here. There's 5 of them. It's 5 or 6. We click that, they disappear and then reappear. You've got 3 or 4 banks in there as well of those. You've got your cue markers showing on the preview. So you've got here, look, the little A, and the little B showing where the actual markers are, where the cues are. You've got your sampler, your enlarged waveform, automatic or customize. You could also choose your waveform colors, so blue or RGB, as you would expect with the likes of Serato. You can choose your jog display, so you can have a hot cue countdown now, which is very similar to Serato again. Serato, the color of the bars change as you get nearer to your next cue point. And then you've got your hot cues. You could choose to have them like a normal CDJ, which is all green on this particular controller. You can have cold 1, cold 2, or colourful. Colourful is the one I like. It starts off with red, blue, blah, blah, blah. And then you've got your pad effects options, so you can change what the buttons do. That's the ones on that particular functionality there, on the second option on there. And then your sampler, whether it's sync with the frequency or fixed. You can then set all your audio settings. I'm not going to go into that one too much because that will change depending upon the controller or sound card you're using. The analysis functionality. Now, this is something that's quite important and something you should maybe take notice of. The normal and dynamic. So at the moment I use it in normal, and I think I'll keep it in normal. The reason being, normal will give you a static BPM. So during the entire time, the 92 BPM is the average across the track. Dynamic will give you a more accurate BPM, but it will constantly change and shift as the speed of the track changes. So if you're listening to something a little bit older or something that's not computer driven, so live band stuff, you'll find that the BPM on the track will change constantly. It'll flicker a few tenths of a BPM backwards and forwards all the way through, and at slow parts it will slow right down. It's good if you're going to be using tracks that do change BPM, so transition tracks and stuff like that. But in general, for me, I find the normal functionality better. The key analysis on import and the value of IOD3 tag, I've got that off because I use mixed in key. But if you don't use mixed in key and you want Pioneer to manage that, you can tick those on and it will do that for you. And then your analysis process. So you've got normal or performance. Normal is just the standard slow average functionality, average analysis speed. Performance is where it will use the multi-cores on your computer. Into your controller, so it's picked up that I've got a DJing SX2, and it will allow you to adjust all the functionality relative to that controller, including where your recordings are stored, the silence threshold, so it'll listen for audio before it starts recording, and then all of the rest of the settings for that. Quantized beat value, keyboard. This is for your additional functionality, your little extras. Again, if you want to do that, you're more than welcome to. It is kind of like MIDI controller programming to a degree. I'm just waiting. There we go. Advanced just brings you up the options for your iTunes library and your database management stuff, and how the browser works, the colors, all the functionality there, and obviously the Kuvo link up, and then the error log information, and then finally your license stuff. Now, I'm not going to hang around on that because obviously it's got my license keys on there. I will blank them out before you see them, but that is where all your license information, and that will also cover stuff like Pioneer, the video side of things. There, I do have the video license, but I don't have it activated on this computer. So you can add that. You can add more remix effects, and you can also add DVS functionality as well. There are three things that are added by add-on packs, so to speak. Your different displays on here. So you've got your 2-deck horizontal. That's very similar to the likes of Virtual DJ, and Serato does have a view like this. You've got your 2-deck vertical, got 4-deck horizontal. Bit too much going on. You've got space there for another 2 decks worth of audio. In fact, let's just drop those in so you can see what it looks like with 4 tracks up there. And then you've got your 4-track vertical. Again, getting a bit heavy, but the thing I do like about this is they are small decks in 4-deck mode, so you still have a decent browser window. The other good thing with this as well is down the bottom here, you've got a little split screen option. If you click on that, it actually splits the browser from your main window, so you can shift it and you can actually put it on another screen if you wish to do so. And then you can obviously just click the button to dock it back. Where are we? There we go. There we go. Dock it back into place. All in all, I have to be honest with you, I do really like Rekordbox. The library stuff is a little bit of a failure for me. I think it needs to be better. But that's my own personal view. You can hunt your tracks through your Explorer to go through your files and stuff like that. It is very intuitive. It does work very well, and it's a really nice looking bit of kit. I think that give it a little bit more time, and I think it will be an amazing piece of kit. It is the newest software on the market. It does need a little bit more time. I think it does have amazing functionality, because you've got to remember this is based on the export function, the original Rekordbox. So this is the stuff you can export the files out to USB and then go play them on an extra software. So you're getting dual functionality with this software. Everything's already analysed, and if you're switching between CDJs or Pioneer XDJ R1, I think it is the USB version, or even the 1000s, the new multimedia units, then this is going to do everything for you. This is going to do the audio, the management of your files, everything quite well. And I do think that it's something that should be looked into. We'll move on now, though, and have a look at our next piece of software. So in the second part of the video, we are looking at MixVibes DJ software called Cross DJ. This is 3.4.3. If you want to see a full review, this won't be an in-depth review, but if you want to see a full review, you can go to the other video on my channel. I'll link it in the description below, and I'll also link it at the end of the video as well, if you want to go and have a look at that. It's a bit more in-depth and looks at all the aspects of an older version of the software. There aren't very many changes moving forward into this current version, but you will see stuff like Ableton Link now available within Cross DJ, and also the video software which is in there previously. We've got the 2 monitor screens and then the main output screen in the middle there, and you can toggle your external display. Basic stuff that you'd expect to see. The thing to look at with this is the history of it a little bit, really. So MixVibes originally made the Rekordbox software for Pioneer, the Rekordbox software that we all know and love, and up until version 4, I believe they were heavily involved in the build of it. I'm not entirely sure, I have to be honest, as to how much involvement they still have, but you'll see a lot of things relevant or similar even within Cross DJ that you will have seen in the previous section of the video about Rekordbox. So there are some bits missing, but there are some additions that are in Rekordbox that are quite handy little extras. So just looking through the basics and the overlay, the overview of the layout, get that right, you can see that it's a very standard function set. You can see on the left there's quite similar stuff with regards to how it looks in Rekordbox. So you got your collection, your SoundCloud, your files, your iTunes, your prepare list, and an autoplay functionality as well. And you've got a little Rekordbox sync function at the bottom here, so you can sync it to a Rekordbox readable XML file. Over the right hand side, you've got your analysis, your the match function, which is something I quite like from this, where when you're listening to a track, it will look at what you're playing, look at what you've played previously, and look at your collection and see what would work with that, BPM and stuff like that. So that works really well, and I believe it is in Rekordbox. I forgot to look when I was doing it, but I believe it is part of Rekordbox. You've got some file information stuff, and you've got a preview player, which is quite a handy extra if you've got a decent multi-output sound card. Probably not so useful if you are using a controller, but then it's each to their own, isn't it, really? On the 2 decks, you can see here we've got a couple of Otis McDonald tracks from the YouTube audio library. We use audio files from YouTube, as I said previously, just because of the copyright reasons. You can see there are other tracks there within the list. This isn't a copy that I use regularly. This is one that is on my machine for this type of thing at the moment. The full version is on my work PC for when I'm gigging. You'll see we've got the artwork stuff. You'll see that the normal deck layout is there with your Q play sync. It's a BPM jump type affair. You can change the length of that sync functionality, and you can there we go. You can change the way that it works with the jump. You've got your auto loop side of things. You've got your your pitch control variation, so how big you want it to be. You've got your master tempo, and then this at the bottom is your hot cues. So they call it locators on Cross DJ. And one thing you'll know that is glaringly missing from this that is in Rekordbox DJ is the functionality of the 8 pads with your hot cues, rolls, slicers, your pad effects and stuff like that. That isn't here within Cross DJ, so it's a little bit more stripped down. You'll see that it's a pretty standard way of working. Just put a track on in the background there, and you can see that we've got your normal EQ controls, and you've got your filter, of course, that you would expect to find these days. Your main volume control, you've got your Q indicator and your gain at the top, and then you've got this central loop function, which as it's going round is working by beats and will allow you to see if your tracks are in sync. So I'm not normally a DJ that would use sync, but let's just hit that sync button and master to get the speed up. Yes, it sounds a bit odd, doesn't it? We'll put it's on hybrid on the pitch mode, so I'm back onto master tempo. So there we go, with the sync on. That was a pretty easy mix across. I didn't really do a lot to get that done. That wasn't the height of my skills, I have to be honest. Using obviously the quantized and the snap function, it hit the beats bang on with the other track. So it gives a nice smooth transition there as well. And you can see that loop function at the top of the screen working there. And you will have seen it while it was actually in the mix as well. From the mixer section, going to the bottom here, you've got your crossfader for your audio and your crossfader for your video. You can link those, and obviously you get the function to assign. This does have a quad deck mode, and you can choose how it works. It's a bit like Traktor in the sense you can have 2 players, 2 samplers, 4 players, 3 players and 1 sampler, 3 players and a different sampler. So if we just pop that up, you can see your sample bank here to your left hand side and your deck to the right hand side, and then your mixer changes to a 4-channel mixer, and you've got the 4-channel assigned there. So it does have 4-channel functionality. We'll just drop it back to 2 channels for the moment. Your settings is something you'll probably be familiar with to a degree. A lot of the layout of this is very similar to Rekordbox. There is some extra functionality you can purchase. You can purchase a remote control functionality, and then obviously you can remove the watermarks and activate all the video functionality as well. Now for me, I've got to be honest, I find Cross DJ a nice functional piece of software, and it's pretty stable. I don't seem to have many issues with it when I'm using it out. It seems to have been poorly accepted in the world of DJing, and I'm not entirely sure why. I do think Mix Vibes deserve a lot of credit. If it wasn't for the likes of this software, we wouldn't have Rekordbox in the market at the moment. So I do think we need to give Rekordbox a bit of Mix Vibes a bit of credit, and it isn't an expensive piece of software. Have a Google search for Mix Vibes and you'll find the details for Cross DJ. There are a few different variants of the software, but all in all, it does what it says on the tin. It is an alternative to the likes of Virtual DJ, Rekordbox. It's with that video functionality adding a little bit more. I've not tried karaoke tracks with it, but with them being MP4 files in the majority these days, I don't see karaoke files being a particular problem within the video side of this. But all in all, I've got to say I am impressed with it. I do like it. There are a few bits missing that I would normally expect from this level of software, but I don't see that that's a massive issue if you're going to be using it on a more mobile rig type basis, and it's cheaper than your alternative. So it's cheaper than the likes of Serato and the likes of Traktor as well, and it still gives you that professional feel as well. I'm not going to be touching Virtual DJ while I'm going through this. I don't have a license for Virtual DJ. I'm not going to get any cracked versions to show you. I don't condone piracy at all, so I'm only talking about the 4 softwares that I own, which are, of course, Rekordbox we've already looked at, Mix, Rhymes, Cross DJ that we're looking at now, Traktor and Serato. We'll move on now and we'll have a look at one of the others for you. So moving on to our third piece of software in this video, we're looking at the now very famous Serato DJ. Originally, this was the leader in DVS controlled software. It was Serato Live. Things have changed, it's moved on and it's become very controller centric, although the functionality for it to be used for DVS stuff is still there. It's still usable and they still support it a high amount. It's still a great piece of software. Now, I have to put some caveats into this particular section of the video because this is the video I use, the software, that I use. This is my go-to. As I say, I do own all 4 pieces of software that I'm reviewing and I have used them all on a regular basis. But if I'm not using video, if I'm not using karaoke, which I don't do, then if it's just an audio event, then this is my absolute go-to. The reason being, for me personally, in my experience, Serato has been absolutely rock solid. I've only had one instance where it crashed while I was DJing in all the years that I've been using it, and that was an old version that I then rolled back to a previous release and waited for a new release to come out. Since then, I've never had an issue with it, and I still don't have issues with it today. Now, it's not as customizable as the likes of Traktor DJ, Traktor Pro, Traktor Scratch Pro, whichever way you want to look at Traktor Pro. And I do believe that the file management system in Serato is awful. I personally, as you can see from the left-hand side here, use the file folders within my hard drive to categorize everything because I work for varying different types of events, varying different types of music. It's never one particular type. I'll do club stuff one week or I'll do a wedding a week after. So my collection has to be quite varied. It has to be different. And managing this within Serato in your first instance is a nightmare. It is an absolute nightmare. You have to create a crate and then drag the files from your folder into that crate, name the crate the same and go through. And as you can see, there are quite a few folders here. There is a little piece of software that came out when Serato Itch was released. It's a little Java file that runs on Windows PCs that will find all your MP3 files and all your folders and put them into a Serato file list. As you'll see, like the crates on the left-hand side. So it builds all your crates for you, puts all your tracks in and everything else. And that is quite handy, but it only deals really with your standard files. So it doesn't deal with FLAC files and stuff like that. And I use a lot of FLAC. I have got a slightly edited version of that software that I use personally, which unfortunately I'm not going to share because it was a good friend that did the editing for me. And I would need his permission. But that is edited to bring through any audio files, and that works really well. But all in all, apart from if you can get over the file management side of things, Serato really is the performance beast that you want it to be. Now, this version that I've got on here is running with my Pioneer DDJ SX2, and as you're probably aware, it does need Serato hardware to run, so you can't just buy the software and use any controller on it. It has to be one with a controller with Serato enabled chipset inside it. Now, there are cheaper versions coming out all the while. There are different variants coming out, so there are now mixers that have Serato embedded. There are now small controllers like the, I believe it's the Akai stuff, the AMC controllers that have Serato built in. You've obviously got the DVS boxes, and Denon recently brought out a very cheap DVS box for Serato. So there are now more ways than ever to be able to get access to Serato. You can do video on Serato. I choose not to. I've heard a lot of instances where Serato video isn't as good as the other softwares that I've touched on, so I tend to stay away. And it is you do have to pay extra for the video functionality, which, as I've got other software that does it, there's no need for me to do that. So the video side of it, you can hold your own view on. My personal view is that I have other software that will do that. I don't need this to do that, so I don't choose to use that. Within Serato, as with most software now, you now get the able to link functionality, and it's very customizable in the way of views. So you can have a 2-deck or 4-deck view, and you can choose between horizontal, extended, so you get a wider view of the track decks, but then you get 4 decks underneath. You get the stack, which is all 4 decks to the left hand side and the track waveforms on the right hand side. And you get the vertical view with all 4 decks and the 4 tracks running up the center, with the 2 main decks in the center and then the 2 auxiliary 3rd and 4th decks on the outer side. I personally use the horizontal view because that's the one I use. I find more comfortable, and I use it on 2 deck. If I need to, when I switch onto deck 4, for example, it will switch the view to deck 4 on the screen anyway. So I don't see an issue with using it in 2 deck mode and switching between the decks that are playing via the controller. Now, Serato has recently added key analysis in the Camelot style and a few other bits of functionality to the software as well. The sampler has been upgraded recently from a 6-deck sampler to an 8-deck sampler, and you get 4 banks to load up as well. And using the performance pads on a controller like the Serato DJ SX2, you get really good access to those decks through the controls on the 8 pads. Really good little layout, really well done, very simple, very effective. You've obviously got all the effects controls like you expect to see, and very similar to what you would see in Traktor. So you've got single or group mode, and then you can choose what your effects are on each of them. Or if you've got the single mode, you've got 1 effect and you've got more control, so more functionality, more variables within that one control. And then you've got the built-in record functionality, which is just a very simple hit record, tell it where you want to store it, and off it goes. And I've got to be honest with you, that is one of the good points for me with this software. The stability of that and the quality of the record function, the recording that comes out of it is very good. Really impressed with that. Nice and easy to use. And then of course you've got your 4 file management screen. So you've got your 5. So you've got your standard browser. You've got your files list so that you can go through. This is the hard drive itself. And as you can see, I've got my YouTube authorized audio there that I've dragged into the 2 decks. And you can go through that list and you can go backwards and forwards through the files. You've got your browse functionality, which gives you your genre, your BPM, your artist, and your album tag searches. So you can just do a quick, if you want ABBA, it'll bring up all your ABBA. If you want Adele, it'll bring up all your Adele, and so on and so forth. You know, it is quite a good way of doing it. You've got a preparation list as well. So if people are asking you for requests through an evening, you can drag and drop those files into the prepare list, and they will stay there for later on when you need to use them. You can use that as an auto playlist as well. And then you've got your history. So you can go back to what you've done previously and have a look through a set while you're playing, and it will give you those options to compare with what you've done previously. You've also got, obviously, MIDI learn. So if you've got an external controller that you add, you still need your Serato controller plugged in, but you can add any other MIDI enabled controller to it and add your own functionality. In my case, on my main control, I have an Ovation Launchpad, one of the original ones, set up to control the sampler and a few other bits as well. And it's a nice little backup to load tracks and stuff like that if you have problems with the controller. And then through your setup, you've got all your functionality, quite customizable, but limited enough to keep control of the software. You can, of course, buy more effects. You can buy more functionality. So they have the expansion pack. So you can see their Serato video, extra sample stuff, Serato playlists and Serato remotes are standard. You have to have you have to download the iPad software for Serato remote to work. And you can enable all the different functionality through there as well. All in all, as I say, this isn't an in-depth review by any stretch of the imagination. This is just an overview. And Serato, for me, is rock solid for audio. It works a treat. It's brilliant. And there is only really one other software I would use if I wasn't using this at this stage in time. And it's purely down to the stability that is deciding that for me on both sides. So that's my view and my feelings on Serato. If you've got any questions, feel free to drop them below, and we'll move on to the final software in the video, which is going to be Traktor DJ, or Traktor Pro, sorry. So, okay, we move on to the fourth and final video of the review stroke comparison type video. I don't know whether you really call it that. We're not going too deep into any of the softwares on this. We're just trying to give you the facts and the key points of my opinions between these 4 pieces of software and my use of them over the years. So the fourth and final one that we're looking at is the software Traktor Pro from Native Instruments. Very, very famous and extremely customizable. Now, this is the one that you see a lot of producer DJs using, really. A lot of that comes down to the new stems format and the remix decks that are available within Traktor. Also, the customizability of the software as well is second to none when it comes to how it looks, how it performs, and what you can do with it with add-ons and add-on MIDI controllers and so on and so forth. It is pretty endless what you can do with this piece of software. Now, the side to this that you've got to be wary of is that once you start getting deep into Traktor, you can be there for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours just setting up MIDI mapping because it is so flexible. Now, if you're looking for something that you want to tailor to your usability, then that's absolutely fine. You can use pretty much any controller with Traktor, because if there isn't a map already available within the software, you can get maps online to control the software. So, for example, the Pioneer DDJ SX2 that I use isn't strictly mapped for Traktor, but Pioneer do provide their own map for it that you load into Traktor, and it will provide all the functionality that you expect to see from it. Now, the library management stuff on Traktor is by far my favourite out of all of the software that we look at today. Much more user-friendly, and it also auto-updates when you add new tracks to a folder, so you can set it to do a consistency check at the beginning when it loads up. This will take a little while longer to load up than it would normally do, but during that process it will go through, it will check if there are any new files that need to be added to your collection. It will also check for any missing files. It will tell you how many are missing. It will give you the option to remove them from your library as well. And it also tells you how many are analysed and how many need to be analysed. So it gives you a really good overview every time you upload the software, or sorry, every time you load up the software, as to what is available within your collection. There's none of the faffing that you get with Serato with having to create crates. You can just explore as you normally would do through a hard drive, as you can see on the left hand side here. This is within one of my hard drives on my computer where my YouTube music is stored. But if we go to this hard drive here, it's just loading the subdirectories. Just takes a moment. You can go in, and then all my tracks that we saw in Serato a moment ago, all the folders are already there. They're already in the collection. I can go into any of them, select them and play them. Now, the views that you have within Traktor, you have 2 decks and the mixer as the essential, the main setup. But again, even that you can customize to what you want. You can remove the cover art. You can change what is displayed within each of the headers of the decks. So you can have the key in there. You can have it time elapsed, time remaining. In fact, if I just get that screen up, this will show you exactly what I'm talking about. It does take a little while because there are a lot of configuration options within Traktor, so it does take a moment for the system to load that up, and it is partly because I'm recording on the same PC as I'm using the software on at the moment. So we just drag this onto the screen here. You can see there's an audio setup option, the routing of how your audio sound card works, the input routing, all details about your MIDI clock and how you send that. That also links into the Ableton Link control that you can see at the top there that is now on a lot of the software. Options with regards to loading, so stopping you from loading stuff into a playing deck. You have that option on most software. That's not something strictly specific to this, but there are a few other little options within there as well. Your transport options, so that you can set your current tempo range and the maximum, so you can have any gradient from there within the tempo range and what the current tempo range is, and obviously you can scroll through that within the deck. Your tempo bend sensitivity, so when you're giving it a little nudge, how much does it give it a nudge? The different types of sync functionality, what type of PC you have, whether you have a PC that can handle high quality audio key lock, or whether you want it to be more of a scratch mode so that you get that traditional sounding scratch rather than a computerized scratch which you would get if you had it on normal. You've got your loops, your auto detect size, your beat counters, your mouse control, whether you want it in vinyl mode or snap mode. So when you click it, does it go to a snap point or does it scratch? and then the type of cue play functionality. You've got the layout here, so you can have what type of decks they are. So are they the micro decks? Are they the small decks? The essential decks? The full decks? Or even the advanced decks? Normally I would tend to have it just on the full, I have to be honest. And then you can turn on deck C or D to be permanently on screen there. So deck C and D, you can change what type of deck they are. So whether they're a remix deck or a stem deck, we'll put both of those on there. I don't have any stems to play in Traktor at the moment to show you the stems. But if you have a look on Native Instruments website, there is a great video going on about how stems work and how it splits them down to all stem tracks are in 4 parts. So you usually get a beat, a bass line, a melody, and a vocal, and you can split that, and you have control over the volume of each 4 of those, and it plays just in one deck. So that's a great handy feature for the more producer-based DJs, and obviously the remix decks provide sample one-shot firing. Usually using Traktor F1, or you can use other controllers as well. You can map that. And then this is what I was saying with regards to the deck header. You can change what is in each section. So this top left-hand one here, title, refers to there. Artist refers to where the artist is on the screen at the moment. Bottom row is release. So if I change that release, I can change that to let's have a look. Total gain. So that will give me a gain control there. It tells you what volume that is, what dBs. You've got your remaining time, your total time, your label, and every single part of this is customizable. So we'll just change this to key. There we go. And key text should be what's stored within your, there we go. Key text is what's stored within your tags on your file. So if you're using something like mixed in key and it stores in the initial key tag, that's how you'll get that to show by showing the key text. From there, you've got the advanced tab, so you've got move, cue, and grid. That's what we saw when we had it on advanced mode. There was a secondary little bar underneath there. Just going to get rid of the C and D for a moment so that we can carry on. The remix decks, it shows you the functionality within the remix decks and how you can control them. The mixer itself, so you can change the EQ type, filter type. I'm not going to go through all of this. I think you can see what I mean with regards to how customizable this is. It has a browser option. It has a mix recorder option. It has a loop recorder. It has everything you could possibly want. The options with regards to analyzing and how you want the keys to be displayed. So open key is similar to Camelot, if I believe, if I'm right there. The controller manager, so this is how you can look at the mapping for this particular controller. So on mine, you can see that it's mapped to F1, F2, F3, F4, blah, 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 shift, F1, blah, 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 and down and down and down. That's the default keyboard mapping. And then we've got all the DJing SX2. In Pioneer's case, they split this up to make it a bit easier to control and understand. And then we've got the X1 control, which I have sat on my desk as well. My X1 control sits there permanently, whereas the SX2 only comes out when I'm doing videos and stuff like this. And of course, at the bottom here, you've got the setup wizard where you can have it run through everything for you. Now, the key things for me, and this is just my personal opinion with regards to Traktor, and obviously the other pieces of software we've looked at within this video. For me, pitch and time within Serato is by far the better of the pitch, master tempo, key lock options. The audio quality from Serato and Pioneer Rekordbox for me are the better of the 4. Not to say that Traktor's bad, but you will find Traktor's audio output is better when it's using their own Native Instruments hardware. The key lock stuff is good, but it isn't as good as Serato in my personal view. I do think that Traktor is unlimited in its customization, but then at the same point, I have had issues in the past with its stability. That has got better in recent years. I feel like Traktor Pro 2 has been around a long time without any major changes. So we've had the addition of, obviously it was originally the sample decks, and then it changed to the remix decks, and recently the stem decks. And as good as they are, and as fantastic as they are a very niche set of functions. You know, they are very much for somebody who's a controllerist DJ. This software is a controllerist DJ's heaven. Now, not saying that takes it away from anything else, but the things that you don't have within Traktor that you do within Cross, within Serato, and within Rekordbox, you don't have video functionality. There is no video functionality within Traktor. You can get a different version of Traktor, which is Traktor Pro Scratch, which gives you the DVS control, which is a little bit more expensive than the standard version of Traktor. But Traktor's DVS control is on a par with Serato's. They are both very, very good for the timecode controlled systems. Traktor and Serato both have HID control of the Pioneer CDJ range, I believe. There is no hardware requirement for Traktor Pro. You can buy Traktor Pro and use it off any sound card or controller, whereas Serato, you have to have a Serato authorized controller. So there are doors and options with both. There are preferences with both. If you want the customization side of things, then Traktor is by far hands down the winner. As I say, previously there has been stability issues, but then, as I said previously, there has been in the past with Serato. That has become a lot better. Rekordbox is a lot newer, so we don't really know what the future of Rekordbox looks like with regards to stability. In its early days, I was on the beta side of the trial, and it was a little bit jittery. Again, that has got a lot better. Cross, I find pretty stable. I've got to be honest with you. I don't see any major issues with that. So it really is down to what you want from your software. If you want flexibility and you want to be able to do what you want to do with the software when you want to do it, you don't need video functionality, then Traktor, absolutely. If you want the video functionality and you want a bit of flexibility, but you don't want to be having to change 1,000 settings before you get it how you want, I would certainly look at Rekordbox as being one of those options, or even Cross DJ. But if you want something that you just plug in, play, and it does what you want it to do straight away, you want a stable platform that's not going to give you any upsets, then Serato is absolutely that option for you. Now, it's entirely your choice. This is only a video from my experience as to what I feel from the software. And in my view, Traktor and Serato are the winners at the moment. I might do another video in 6 to 12 months' time when Rekordbox has been around a bit longer. As I said a moment ago, don't count out Cross DJ. The reason I've included it in this is because I don't think it gets enough press. I don't think it gets enough recommendations. It is a perfectly valid and perfectly usable piece of DJ software with some great functionality. So really, in all, it isn't necessarily a case of this one's better than that one. Everyone has its own place. Everyone sits where it wants, where you want it to sit within your choice. And they all have different price ranges as well. There are usually offers on with regards to Serato and Traktor. We've seen occasional offers from Mix Vibes with Cross DJ as well. But all in all, it is all about what you want to do. This is just my opinion, and I hope it's been a useful video. If you do have any questions about any of the 4 pieces of software, feel free to add them in the details below. I will just do a quick snippet after this of the pros and cons for all 4 softwares, and I'll leave the choice up to you. Thanks for taking the time. Please make sure you like, subscribe, and share the video. And if there's anything you want me to review or do an overview of, add that into the comments as well. It's been great having you. I'll do the overview after this, and we'll see you next time.